I proclaim with all the power that is in me that the Inside Out podcast is the only true and living podcast on the face of the whole earth, with which I, Bruce Reginald McConkie, am well pleased, speaking under the podcast collectively as well as individually.
Hello.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm coming to you from the bowels of the conference center. Once again, this is the week of the Tabernacle Choir Christmas concerts. So I'm going to be down here tonight, tomorrow night, and then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I'm going to be here all day Saturday because we're also taping the concert. They release all of the concerts a year after the fact as video and as CDs. And so we do a recording session on Saturday so that we can clean up anything that we didn't get well during the live broadcast. So this is essentially where I live, and there's a loud thing that keeps coming on, and I don't know what it is. I think Satan has control of the inside of the conference center. So that's where I am broadcasting from. So I hope everybody can hear me and all is well. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Yeah, just trying to manage life and business and work and develop the podcast and bring really entertaining, exciting information. And if Satan is around, he's welcome to join us. We've got some questions for him for sure.
We do indeed. Speaking of Satan and questions for him, I titled this, Is Mormon Copyrightable? And instantly, I mean, that was the wrong thing to say. Instantly, somebody on Twitter pointed out, no, the issue isn't copyright. The issue is trademark. Can you sort of explain what that means?
A little bit, yeah. So it's difficult not to see the church as a corporation, right? So the church is not a traditional business in the sense of a profit generating business, for-profit kind of enterprise. It is a non-profit enterprise, and it's a charitable enterprise. Notwithstanding, it has the right to trademark symbols and its name, like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, just like a corporation would, like a charity would, for example. And it has the right, and it does so, to trademark the name Mormon. It's arguably the one that controls and owns that name. And the trademark status is historical. The church has held trademarks on the term Mormon when it was used in conjunction with other words like Mormon Tabernacle Choir, which are part of Mormon Org, I'm a Mormon, the Book of Mormon, of course, which is the most famous one. However, the church has been actively working to discontinue the use of the term Mormon and LDS since 2018, and placing more emphasis, as you know, on the full proper name of the religion, which is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is a big deal for the late President Nelson. So while the term Mormon is itself generally considered a generic or common descriptive term in the use of public media, etc., the church still retains and enforces its trademark rights on specific phrases and, of course, the use of the word and identity of the word Mormon. So the current copyright status is that and trademark is that the Mormon name is protected by law. It has, there's some copyright and trademark law around books and music and art, of course, and it's very protective of the use of the term Mormon. The Book of Mormon itself is a published book, of course, and it's covered by trademarks.
It is not. The Book of Mormon is over 200 years old, or almost 200 years old, and it is, at least in the United States, copyright protection disappears after, I think it's 75 years, or the life of the author plus 75 years. So the Book of Mormon is in the public domain. Now, I don't know if you can copyright or trademark. Again, we have some comments here that sort of explain the difference. But the Book of Mormon, everything in the Book of Mormon, it is all public domain. It can all be used in any way you possibly can. So it becomes really difficult to understand. I mean, so do you want to read some of these comments here?
Yeah. My research is contrary to that. It says that the Book of Mormon, because the terms in the Mormon, etc., is trademarked. In fact, before we read the comments, the church has notified, as you know, a number of podcasters. I understand Mormon Stories,
John Dehlin, yeah.
John Dehlin, Radio Free Mormon. They've been notified, as far as I understand, and advised not to use the word Mormon, which is in the Book of Mormon, entitled the Book of Mormon. So my research tells me something a little bit different. So it'll be interesting to get some feedback on this. And then the comments are here. Okay, so Jared Vaughan says, I would say no if used to describe something generic. Otherwise, how could anyone be critical of anything on YouTube if you cannot name it in your channel? That's an excellent point. I think my take on that is that if you've got it in your a title, like in your book or some literature on the name of your podcast, you know, the Mormon is in the name of the podcast, then the church clearly, because it has an intellectual property rights office, feels it's got the right to advise people not to use that if it's in the title. If it's in the body of the material, perhaps that's someone different. I'm not a lawyer and not an expert on this by any means, but go ahead. You'll read the next one.
First, let's get the terms right. This is from Minaguta 4147. First, let's get the terms right. This is about trademarks, not copyrights. Single terms or short phrases cannot receive copyright protection. They can receive trademark protection, however. And Jared Vaughn says, so yes, the church can trademark lettering and symbols that represent the church, but it cannot trademark the name itself that describes 20 million people and is used by multiple restoration branches. And I think that's the heart of the issue, is that the Mormon Stories logo, the church believes that the font they're using is too similar to the church's font. So it isn't necessarily the word itself, it's the presentation of the word. So I'm trademarking a word in a way that you can't use the word to describe something. That I can see you trademarking a logo. You know, we can talk about McDonald's all day long, but if we slap that big Golden Arches logo on everything and say this is the McDonald's story with a big, I think McDonald's does have a case that we couldn't do that, and I think that's kind of what's happening here.
I would go further than that. If you had a restaurant selling burgers and you put the symbol of McDonald's on, and you called it McDonald's as a title, you can bet your bottom dollar McDonald's will have a problem with that. And I think that's what the issue is. If your Mormon is in your name of the organization or the business or enterprise that you're involved in, I think that's the issue. Again, I'm no trademark expert here, and anyone out there that's got experience, clearly we've got some listeners here who've got a little bit of insight into this, who can educate us. And Clayton, hi Clayton, always good to see you in the Mormon Voice from the conference center at Temple Square. This is the 6th weekly live stream of the Inside Out podcast furnished by Bennett Wilkes Communications. Hey, do we have copyright on Inside Out? I think we should.
We're going to have to fight Pixar. There was a movie called Inside Out, 2 movies. Inside Out, I mean, there's no possible way we could. I think we can trademark the goofy AI caricatures we've got there. Anybody posts those, they're in big trouble.
Yeah,
we're coming after you.
Yeah, and if you want to buy it, we're open. The bid start at how much? $1 million, or is that too high?
I would take $500,000.
I would. Yeah, absolutely.
So glad I could make it tonight. Glad you could make it tonight as well, SLC Vinyl.
Absolutely.
And Clayton, I think, sums up the entire controversy in 2 words.
Who cares? Absolutely. That's true. And the other thing that we talked to briefly just a moment before we started the podcast tonight is the church is, I mean, just think about this. The church spent millions of dollars promoting Mormon, right? It had this. The brand is Mormon, right? We've had this brand, and it's been pushed and encouraged. President Hinckley, President Monson, I'm a Mormon. Mormon means good. Just endless references to Mormon. The big I'm a Mormon campaign, Mormon.org. Then Nelson comes in, stops all that, and you can't use the word Mormon now because it's a victory to Satan. And now, if you are using the word Mormon in your heading or your logos, they get quite protective of that. So, yeah, who cares? I agree with Clayton, and it must be a big deal to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be notifying these other podcasters in regards to using the name Mormon in the title. So,
well, there's a woman I follow on Twitter. Her name is Gabrielle Blair, and she's the sister of Sarah Urquhart, who were our neighbors when we were in St. George. And she's written a book called Ejaculate Responsibly. That is, she's a progressive member of the church, and she's always fascinating. And somebody got mad at her because in her pinned tweet, she says, I'm a Mormon with 6 kids, and I am for abortion rights and other sorts of things. And they said, nobody who is a Mormon or nobody who's a member of the church would use the word Mormon anymore. And her response was, the only man on earth who cared about that is dead. And so I'm going to use Mormon all that I want. And so I'm really interested to see, particularly if the listeners out there agree with me. I think the word Mormon is creeping back into faithful members' vocabularies. I mean, it never left the world at large because we didn't offer a substitute word, and President Nelson's insistence that everybody just use the full name of the church. It's just language craves simplicity. There's no possible way that you're going to just remove a perfectly serviceable word that's simple and easy to understand and replace it with an 11-syllable title that nobody understands other than members of the church. And it's very clear that President Nelson had this as a sort of pet peeve for decades on end. And then finally, when he gets in charge, woohoo, I get to do this, and I get to term Mormon as a victory for Satan. But I don't think that Dallin Oaks believes that. I don't think that Henry Eyring believes that. I mean, Henry Eyring was in the first presidency when the I'm a Mormon campaign was all over the place. And I don't think that Todd Christofferson believes that. So I don't think they're going to explicitly disavow what President Nelson did. But do you remember on our missions when President Benson gave that sort of landmark conference talk about pride?
Yes, I do. 89, was it? 89?
It's probably 89. Is it either 88 or 89? I think it was April of 89. Yeah. It was actually, he was too ill to read it himself. President Hinckley read it for him. But in that talk, President Benson said, in the scriptures, there is no such thing as righteous pride. And I don't know if you remember this, but for a while, we couldn't say we were proud of our wives or proud of our children because President Benson had said that's a word that is only bad. There is no such good thing as righteous pride. Yeah. And that sort of endured for a few years. And it was finally, I think, President Uchtdorf who explicitly said, yeah, he referenced that talk and he said, but I am proud of my wife and I am proud of my children and I am proud to be a member of the church. And so that's completely gone now. I mean, nobody but President Benson cared about that. This, I think, is a much bigger deal, and President Nelson made a much bigger deal about it. But I don't see anybody in leadership who cares about it that much. I don't think that, sadly, the Tabernacle Choir will go back to being the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, although everybody still talks about it as the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. But I maybe it will go back but it's going to take at least a decade, maybe longer.
I do remember that talk on pride. I remember some of the missionaries been advised not to use that. I used it when I was, I said, prior I was out to be serving a mission, was told not to use that. I thought the whole thing was bullshit, frankly. You know, I mean, if we're talking about right now in the current world geopolitical climate issues in America, Canada, the world, and we're concerned about trademark infringement on the word Mormon, which, okay, it's important to them. Surely there are bigger issues to have a conversation about. Surely, I don't doubt for one second the marketing company that came in to advise Nelson and the apostles about the downside of not continuing with the word Mormon, that they advised him to stick with it, and hey, you built this brand on it, etc. They gave him advice. He completely ignored that. He went with his own fetish. I think it was a private thing, and I think it's ridiculous, frankly. I think it's I think there are bigger things to talk about than you know, the word Mormon, and the church has a bigger responsibility to talk about the issues of the day. Right. And so this trademark thing, by the way, Jim, reminds me that the church, although it's a non-profit organization that I mentioned earlier, it behaves very much like a corporation. You know, the church owns a number of companies that are for-profit enterprises, as you know. It also invests significantly in a whole bunch of different, you know, businesses. So although it's not a company in the typical sense of a for-profit organization, it is legally structured as a religious and non-profit, you know, enterprise. And so it does have business interests, you know, across the world. It's got a number of assets. It's got an organization called Ensign Peak Advisors, which is the investment arm of the church. It also owns Deseret Management Corporation, which is a portfolio wholly owned for-profit enterprise. And these enterprises manage up to, allegedly, in my understanding, up to $200 to $300 billion worth of assets. The church isn't as transparent as we would like it to be. I don't think it is anyhow. And also, again, from a, you know, the trademark corporation thing, it invests heavily in a whole range of other enterprises like Nvidia Corporation. I think they do the microchips, don't they? It allegedly invests in Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet Inc., Meta platforms, which I think is Facebook and Instagram. Invests in Amazon.com, Broad Inc. Again, this is my understanding. And on the finance and healthcare, the church's investment companies, for profit, invest heavily in JP Morgan, United Health, and Eli Lilly and Company, and other large organizations like ExxonMobil, MasterCard, Tesla, and Oracle Corporation. It's also got a number of hedge funds and private investment enterprises as well. What I would like to see, if it's behaving like a corporation, and fine, it's got the right to you know, protect its trademarks, etc. I'd like the church to be completely open and transparent on its finances. You know, the church people pay tithing into it. You know, hardworking people who are struggling financially are instructed, directed, commanded to pay tithing. Can't go to the temple without a temple recommend. To get a temple recommend, you've got to pay. You've got to be a full tithe payer. We're coming up to that time now where bishops, and I've gone through this process myself, are having the annual tithing settlement. And the question is, are you a full tithe payer or a part tithe payer? I don't know. I think the part tithe payer comes with some limited conditions on going to the temple for a period of time. That's my understanding from feedback I've had. But there is a need to go back to the bishop and report that you're a full tithe payer. So all this money comes in, the church does stuff with it, and it then organizes it in a way where it's able to fund these other investment groups and these other hedge funds through the for-profit enterprises. And I'd like to see penny by penny, cent by cent, where all the money is going, where it generates, and it's nowhere near as transparent as it should be. So again, the trademark reminds me of the church behaving and acting very much like a corporation. We'd love to get some thoughts and feedback from the listeners.
We've got the Mighty Jor, I think, has given us a lot of info here. You want to read those?
Sure, yeah. Hey, Mighty Joe, hi. I think it's important to get specific when representing these things. RFM tried to file a trademark for Radio Free Mormon because someone was trying to use that name for their podcast. Okay. The Mighty Joe also says the church said no because they own Mormon as a copyright. They didn't tell him he couldn't use RFM, just that they would fight him for the trademark. Interesting. Right.
And then the last one from Mighty Jor.
Yeah, similarly, Mormon Stories isn't being asked not to use a Mormon in their title. They've been asked to differentiate their visual brand from the churches. Thank you for that distinction, Mighty Joe. Appreciate that. It's important to get the information right, Jim. When we hear things and see things. But I have seen what appears to be a formal notification from the church's intellectual property office. I think writing to John DeLynn, and again, this is my understanding, requesting John DeLynn not to use it or to make changes to how he's using it and how he's phrasing it. So,
but again, I think it's not that the name Mormon Stories is the problem. It's that visually his logo looks and feels like a church logo. I think that's where they have legal basis.
Right. Yeah. And that's an important distinction. So if the problem is not the word, and that's what seems to be coming through from our conversation and from our feedback, and it's the logo, that makes sense, because we said earlier that, everybody uses Mormon, right? You're a Mormon. I used to be a Mormon. You can, you can write it down. You could talk about it. You could put it somewhere. You could make, reference to it. I think you're right. I think it's the logo they probably got the problem with. Go ahead.
Well, Clayton says they won't rename the choir again. It's dumb that they renamed the choir. No one thinks Tab Cats is an upgrade. I would never say never. I don't think it can happen. The only way it would happen is if there is a huge public sort of outcry for it. So I don't know.
Another way is if they have, if this trademark thing and logo thing is being commissioned under Revelation, perhaps you need a Revelation to rename the Tabernacle Choir. I think there's a history of U-turns on some of the policies, isn't there?
Well, yeah. Well, when you talk about a logo being a revelation, my mind goes back to the April 2020 General Conference when my sons were serving missions and were recalled because of COVID. And I remember sitting in the Salt Lake City airport parking lot listening to President Nelson as I was waiting for my son to arrive from Argentina. And President Nelson talked about a revelation that he had received, and that he had received a symbol, was the word he used, and went on to describe the church's new logo. And I just sat there going, that's the revelation? The revelation is that we're going to slap the Christus statue on all church communications? That's it? I mean, I just was like, we're in the midst of a global pandemic, and the world is collapsing, and this is the revelation we get? It was a major letdown for me. We have some other really interesting comments here, though. Do you want to? Mighty Jor is a very helpful commentator. He's saying, also, Nelson didn't say the word Mormon was a victory for Satan. He said removing the Lord's name from the name of the church was a victory for Satan. Saying Mormon does not do that. That is correct, Mighty Jor. At the same time, the whole idea of the victory for Satan was being presented to frame why it was so important that we abandon the word Mormon. And the fact that we use the word Mormon, I mean, in the same talk, he said, we are not Mormons. And he kept talking about how when people use the phrase Mormon church, or they talk about us as Mormons, that feeds into the idea that that's not our name, and that removing the Lord's name is a major victory for Satan. So I mean, I've had people say that to me before. He didn't really say that the word Mormon is a victory for Satan. No, he didn't. But that was clearly the intent, and that was clearly the implication of the language. And Jared points out even Joseph Smith and Brigham Young frequently referred to the church as Mormonism. Yeah, in fact, it's in the Doctrine and Covenants, in the 134th section of the Doctrine and Covenants that was written by John Taylor that talks about the death of Joseph Smith. It talks about Mormonism as something that will endure. I don't remember the exact text, but it's in the word Mormonism is in the Doctrine and Covenants. And, so it just becomes sillier and sillier to think that it's not going to survive.
And that raised. Go ahead. You finish. Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just looking through these comments.
Yeah.
But go ahead and make your comment.
I was going to say I appreciate Mighty Joe's comment there and your response to that, and it goes to when prophets and apostles say stuff, right? It's important to get a reliable interpretation of what they mean. Okay. So you can say something, you might get something from it, I might not get something. So I think it's important to clarify what we mean. When we're making statements, stuff like that about victory to Satan and etc. Let's just clarify that. Because you get all kinds of people that think, either accurately or slightly off, what the prophet's intentions are. So, communication is absolutely critical, especially as a prophet. You've got to be clear. You've got to be defined. Often it's important to say what is something is and also what it is not. Otherwise, you get a whole bunch of different interpretations, and we see that across every doctrine. Right? There's a different interpretation in the church. So even leaders, we've had training with President Oakes, and we get a different interpretation of what he meant by hastening the work. Right? So,
well, this is Radio Free Mormon's current Facebook post. LDS Church wants the word Mormon back. So I think they're sort of adding to the confusion here that the focus is on the word. But if you even look right there at Mormon Stories at that logo, that very much looks like a church font. I think RFM has a much stronger case to make, although I wonder if they're upset about the temple. But this is something that doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
I think you can trademark a font. I think
you can trademark a font too. Yes, I think that is absolutely true.
So I do see the similarities with the Mormon Stories thing. So yeah, they probably have a bit of a problem compared to maybe the other ones for sure. So
do you want to read some of the comments?
Howie Rock. Hi, Howie. I probably missed something. How do you copyright a standard English word? I thought the corporation tried this decades ago and was turned down.
Yeah, I think we've covered that pretty well. Clayton is weighing in. I was told today, I'm assuming told today that he couldn't say Mormon. And he also I was taught to say well pleased, like the Book of Mormon parents, as opposed to pride. So Jared Vaughn likes the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square. At least it sounds okay. I mean, I've made peace with it. I'm not upset about it. I don't try to crusade against it. But it's the thing is, Mormon Tabernacle Choir, there's so much brand identity there, and it's all good. I mean, when people talk about the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, it's one of the things in the church that I think almost everybody agrees is a good thing. And when you change the name, you lose a lot of that brand equity. It's just, anyway.
There's that old marketing saying, isn't it? Don't change something that's not broke. This is a Nelson thing. It was his thing. He had it for a long time. Was it 20, 30 years? He got his way, whatever. He's not here now. And I think that Mormon's going to be creeping back in. Which is a good.
Clayton asks, what does Aaron Sheridan, I think he means Aaron Sherinian, think about this whole Mormon thing? Maybe y'all can get Aaron on the podcast. Don't hold your breath, Clayton. I mean, Aaron, again, as people know, Aaron Sherinian, the director of church communications, was the bishop in my father's ward when my father passed away. And I got to know him in that capacity. I did not get to know him in this new professional capacity. And so I have felt very sort of protective of him, as a lot of the hardcore right-wing MAGA gunslingers have come after him because of some of his progressive views. But getting the official church on the record on a podcast like this is nigh unto impossible. I mean, Ian, you're trying to make inroads with some of the official church there. I mean, is there anything about that you want to share publicly, or should we just?
No, I absolutely. We've talked about this openly, publicly before. We have reached out to Matt Holland, who we served with in the Scotland Edinburgh mission. Matt was the zone leader, I think, when I came out, my zone leader, and also was the assistant. Him and I worked together on a whole range of different initiatives. I think you met with him when you came out in late '87. You've met him since. He's a great guy, good relationship. I was talking to Matt about some business stuff back in 2016, 2017, etc., when he was the president of Utah Valley South University.
Utah Valley University, yeah.
Sorry, Utah Valley University, that's right. That was back in 17, 16.
That's currently the largest university in the state of Utah.
Right, okay. I didn't know that. Anyway, him and I was talking back then about some stuff, but I've reached out to him, waiting for him to get back to me, and yeah, we'd love to get someone on. I honestly believe that Inside Out, and you can probably say this with other podcasts, is a very safe place for an official representative of the church, general authority, Aaron Sharinian, perhaps another individual that could come onto the podcast and have a constructive, respectful, meaningful conversation with us without being trapped, without asking a load of questions, and have a really good, balanced conversation, which I think would go a long way to help people understand the church, how it thinks, how it operates, and where its focus is. So if there's anyone out there that knows on the general authorities, leaders or representatives of the church, we have our own connections. Jim, you've got yours, I've got a few of mine, but I think Inside Out would be a fantastic opportunity, and a very safe opportunity to come on and talk about a whole bunch of stuff that is even, faith promoting. Come on and talk. Let's have a conversation. It's the true church of Jesus Christ on the earth, and an opportunity to come on and talk about what the church is doing, especially in the current global climate. Yeah, you can talk about infringement and Mormon and copyright and the use of Mormon, etc. And of course, they're very important things to the church. But there are other big topics that we could discuss, and it'd be fantastic actually to have a general authority or anyone. We've had a mission president on, we've had a bishop on, we've had Richard Bushman on. We're having fantastic conversation with Greg Prince, who's one of the most extraordinary people that we've ever had a conversation with. We've had Sandra Tanner on. We've got some other names that we're working with that could be not ready for to share right now, but some pretty big opportunities that we're developing as a podcast to broaden our appeal and get our message out, etc. And again, just to remind folks, we want the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, to succeed. We don't want it to fail. We don't want it to be destroyed. Others do. We don't. We want it to get better and improve and be more kind and more embracing and build on the great legacy that it's got, on the qualities, and improve in certain areas. So I think there's a real opportunity for a church representative to come onto the podcast and take part in a meaningful and respectful conversation that I think would be very beneficial for the church. And I mean that sincerely.
Well, do you want to read some more of these comments here?
Sure. So Jared Vaughan says, it is even more silly that we are not supposed to call ourselves LDS or Mormon, so we cannot call ourselves anything. Yeah, what do we call ourselves? Jim, what are you? We had this conversation with Greg. What is a Mormon?
It was funny when this first happened. I remember having a conversation with somebody who said, this is great. I'm not a Mormon. I'm not a Latter-day Saint. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I said, excuse me, if you're not a Latter-day Saint, then what is the church? It's a church of Jesus Christ, and it's also a church of Latter-day Saints. So what is a Latter-day Saint? Latter-day Saint is in the name. Latter-day Saint is the best, I think, substitution for Mormon. They don't want to say LDS, which is silly too. I mean, we say BYU and not Brigham Young University because language craves simplicity. It's just the way it is. So we've got some more thing about trademarks. If you want to read that.
Your turn. You go ahead. You read it.
Trademark is a unique sign, symbol, word, or design that identifies and distinguishes the source of goods or services from those of others. Mormon is not unique. It covers educational services, namely providing classes, conferences, and institutes in the field of history of religion and genealogy services. The church, and this is another point, the church does not need to spend money on big temple steeples, especially when the community does not want that. I mean, we've talked about that extensively. So,
go ahead, Jim. You got a few more that you want to read.
A few more. You want to dive into these? I just want to split them up.
Dodo Loco says, when my husband was employed by the church, his paycheck was issued by the corporation of the presiding bishopric. Yeah, that's the church's financial office. Manage all the finances, the tithes and offerings, etc., etc., and of course all the private investment and all the private hedge funds and the corporations that the church is involved in. And they meet on a regular basis. I think it's weekly to provide financial reports and a whole bunch of stuff. We've heard that the church has got more money than God and is absolutely liquid in the hundreds of billions of dollars in respect to its investments and profits, etc. And of course, the corporation of the presiding bishopric is I understand it is a actual corporation. It's a incorporated enterprise of the church and manages all of the financials for the church. Yeah, that's the one who they're the ones who do the payroll for sure.
And well, this is interesting. Bruce Butcher has joined us, and he says, "I'm currently enjoying stocking the pickle aisle more than ever, thanks to Inside Out." Bruce, I don't know if that is a reference. But so I don't know if I've said this on Inside Out, but in the Tabernacle Choir, one of the guys, I mean, we all sort of stick together on the back row. All the back row boys know each other. And somebody joined the choir this year. His name is Josh. I won't give his last name. I don't know if that's a problem, but his first name's important because we sit there and I said, "Now what do you do?" And he says, "I'm a pickler," or I'm a what's the word he used? It wasn't pickler. Briner? Anyway, he owns a company, and it's called Josh's Pickles. And they sell them in Utah, and it took me a while to find them because I didn't realize they're only in the refrigerated section. But they are wonderful. My wife went and got them, and she's like, "Well, these are expensive. I don't think we should get them." And I'm like, "Yeah, but they're really, really good." And it's got his picture on the cover, except for he has a full beard in the picture, and he's not allowed to have a full beard in the choir. But he sells pickles, and he sells pickled jalapenos, which are unbelievably tasty. So if you're in Utah and you're listening to this, go get yourself some of Josh's pickles. He will be very, very happy that I did this little ad for him.
We could create a new company called the Mormon Pickle Corporation, but
Mormon Pickle.
That might have some trademark. Hey, Jim, I've got an interesting question for our listeners that I'm dying to ask.
Okay.
Because I really want to do a quick survey, like for the next few minutes. It's a fun question. Here it is. What is a Mormon? What is a Mormon? Post your responses. Let's get the answers. I suspect they're quite different. They might be the same. We talked about this recently with Greg Prince and Ganesh recently in the last couple of days, and that was a fascinating conversation. Yeah. So what is a Mormon?
Well, we have a few more comments here. Meadic Design. There was a spat between Hinckley and Nelson on the whole Mormon name thing. Yes, there are some fun YouTube videos that get into this. In many ways, that spat was unprecedented. I don't know of any other instance in my lifetime where an apostle gives a talk and 6 months later, a member of the first presidency directly mentions the talk and directly repudiates it. I have not seen that happen any other time in my lifetime. Have you ever seen anything like that?
I haven't. Is that on YouTube? Is that somewhere on YouTube?
Oh, my old friend Cultural Hall has made a number of those, Hinckley versus Nelson. If you go on YouTube and you just type Hinckley versus Nelson, you'll find, you'll find the back and forth between the two of them. I appreciate SLC Vinyls. Great work on decorating your house with the lights, Jim. I posted a picture that I wanted everybody to be impressed. I had decorated it before I posted that picture. What I was pointing out was I keep going back up because I've decorated my house with the old school. I'm not using any LEDs. These are the old bulbs that burn out regularly. And there's always a bulb that burns out on a daily basis. And I have to climb up on a huge ladder to go and change bulbs on a daily basis. So I posted a picture of that online and I said, I want everybody to be impressed. And everybody's been very nice here. Mighty Jor weighs in. You want to read that, Ian?
Yeah, the whole "don't say Mormon" thing is sad to me. It seems to me that it has just become a litmus test for whether you're devout enough. Costly signaling, as Dan McClellan would say. I agree with that. I think that's
being attacked.
Oh no, is that Satan in the background, or what is that? Hissing the serpent?
I don't know. Well, see, this is like the AV room. I mean, these are all furnaces and.
Jim, I just saw something down the corridor. Turn that again. I just saw some like eyes at the bottom there. That's like a serpent. What's that down there? Hissing.
Is there a serpent?
So I just thought I saw a serpent just creeping up on you.
This is very good. We've actually reached out to Dan McClellan. We're hoping to get him on the podcast as well.
We have reached out. Dan came back to us, is interested, and we're going to be talking about putting something together, hopefully with him in January. And if you're hearing this, Dan, I really want to have a conversation with Dan and you, Jim, about this old Christian versus Mormon thing, because I'm on this big Facebook group of 18,000 people defending the Christianity of the church. There are some accusations and labeling from these Christian groups which are, in my opinion, completely inaccurate or false. Some of them, not all of them. And there's a whole debate going on, and have been going on for a long time, the size of which I wasn't aware of until recently, around why a lot of Christians think that the Mormon church is not a Christian church. And I have some of my own personal experiences where I think a lot of it is. So I've been defending the church very strongly with limited success, may I add. But I think Dan McClellan would be an absolutely amazing individual to get on and have get his insight and his knowledge and his wisdom on this topic, along with because he's a Bible scholar, isn't he?
He is. He does his own podcast that came out around the same time we came out with ours. His has a much wider reach, I think, due to a large degree to his just outstanding scholarship. He has this TikTok sort of presence where he will go in and just respond to all of these TikTok videos of people that say ridiculous things, and he's just magnificent. But my claim to fame with regard to Dan McClellan, I've met him on one occasion, but his co-host of his podcast is called Data Over Dogma, and his co-host is a guy named Dan Beecher. And Dan Beecher is an atheist. He used to have a podcast called Thank God I'm Atheist. And he grew up in, I think he was madly in love with my sister in high school. He grew up in our family ward after we moved to Salt Lake. So I've known Dan Beecher for over 40 years. Anyway, Clayton says that tell Matt you'll go easier on him than the BBC went on his father. Ha ha ha. You'll be nice.
Just on the BBC, should we talk about what's going on there with the BBC, or
that's up to you? You're the one having those conversations.
So, by the way, I'd love to get a response on my question earlier about what is a Mormon. I really would like to get people's feedback on that if you can. So
here we got Jared.
Oh, Mormon equals more men without a spouse during the polygamy era. Okay. Nice one. What's a Mormon? We should gather all the good and true principles in the world and treasure them up, or we shall not come out as true Mormons. Joe Smith. That's great. Thank you, Mighty Joe. Great contributions there from you, Mighty Joe.
You froze up. Is that me or is that you? Are you there? I don't know if I'm still broadcasting or if I'm the one who's frozen. Hello, hello, testing. Okay, we seem to have lost Ian. Hope everybody's well. Oh, you can still hear me. Okay, good. I'm going to read through all these comments before Ian gets back. I'm not quite sure what happened there. Let's see. DNC 107, out of respect or reverence to the name of the Supreme Being, to avoid the too frequent repetition of his name, they, the church in ancient days, called that priesthood after Melchizedek. That was my point when President Nelson started making all of this. It was we have deliberately said that the true frequent repetition of the Lord's name cheapens it. And Joseph Smith made that point. So it's, we're going back and forth on that. We have Jared Vaughn says Elon Musk is richer than the church. Yeah, I think, is he? How rich is Elon Musk? Because the church, in terms of liquid assets, in terms of non-liquid assets, the church has more real estate than just about anybody else. Okay, Ian has re-entered the studio and he's connecting his devices. There he is.
I'm here. Yeah, yes. I think Satan is in my room now, trying to stop the podcast.
There we go. Or you're too righteous, because I'm deep in the bowels, controlled by Satan, that's hissing at me.
Yeah. Anyway, we defeated Satan, so that's a plus for Inside Out. What was I talking about? I was saying something. What was it?
I don't know. I was just plowing through the comments here.
Yeah, I remember. I was talking about. Okay, so we have been in touch with the
BBC, yeah,
journalist John Swinney, who was the journalist who was working for the BBC at the time when he interviewed President Holland. Do you remember that train wreck of an interview? I describe it as a train wreck. It was.
We have a whole episode where we dissect that entire interview.
It was just extraordinary. I just thought it was amazing. Anyway, we're in touch with. So John has left the BBC, and we are in touch with his office, and we hope to be getting some progress with him in the new year. The plan would be to bring John onto Inside Out and have him talk about the background and the history in the lead up and the experience that he had when he was interviewing President Holland in President Holland's office. What year was that, Jim? Do we know? Can you remember that?
2012, because it was when Mitt Romney was the Republican nominee for president.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah, that because John actually mentioned Mitt Romney at that particular time. So it's not confirmed yet, but we are working on that. And there's a few other interesting things that we're working on that I think will give Inside Out a bigger, broader appeal in regards to our messages and our information going out to different audiences. Our goal is not to take over the world. Is it to take over the world? Maybe it is to take over the world.
That's my goal.
That's your goal. Yeah, and I can go with that. And so our goal is to have, again, constructive, good, faithful, honest conversations about church, religion, faith, bit of politics thrown in, philosophy, life, right? So yeah, we want to become a little bit more appealing to people, even beyond our Mormon audience. That's one of our goals, at least. But we won't ignore or neglect our grassroots, Jim. We are, Mormons. It's our tribe, as you say. It's your tribe. It's part of who we are, and it's very important to us. So we'll be continuing to run the podcasts and the live programs for the foreseeable future. So, and I think the other one was the question about, what is a Mormon? Have we had any comments in from our listeners or anything else?
Well, Clayton says you keep using the word Mormon, you're becoming possessed by Satan.
Probably.
What we're getting is a lot of suggestions of people that they want to see on. For instance, one says, are either of you friends with Jasmine Rapley? Would be cool to get her on the podcast. To say I'm her friend, I think would be strong. I have met her on several occasions. I was invited down to meet with the folks at Scripture Central, which back then was called Book of Mormon Central. And Jasmine and her husband, Neil, were sort of fixtures there. And so I went and had lunch with them and talked to them extensively about my CES letter reply particularly. I think Jasmine would be a fun one to have on. I don't know what her... I think she likes me now because somebody attacked her online, a former member of the church, and said that she was a man, that she was a trans man. And I knew that she had just had a baby, or I think she's had more than one, but last time I had seen her, she was pregnant. And I was like, she had a baby a couple of years ago. And so she thanked me for that. So that was nice. And this is interesting. I would love to see you guys get on some more controversial guests like Nemo the Mormon and even John DeLynn. We just had Nemo. We've had Nemo twice. I've gotten in trouble because I also invited Nemo to sing with the Tabernacle Choir. I didn't get in trouble with the Tabernacle Choir, but I got in trouble with the self-appointed faith police because there was a member of the Tabernacle Choir that got really mad and posted a picture of Nemo. John DeLynn, somebody else points out that I've done 14 hours with John DeLynn. If you haven't checked out Jim's episodes of Mormon Stories with John DeLynn, I highly recommend. Would be nice to have Ian in that discussion too, though. Ian, you've talked about going on John DeLynn before. Is that something you might be interested in doing?
Yeah, so what happened, I met John in South Salt Lake. We had breakfast together back in 2016 when you and I we were going to President Banks' reunion in 2016. Do you remember that one?
I do.
John and I met, and it was the time I was really going through a difficult time with my faith in the church. And I was kind of just directionless and just wanting to share my story and not having the confidence to share my story. And, you and I talked a bit about that back then. And so I had instead of going on all the podcasts, I had the idea of creating a podcast, as you know, and then the only person I was interested in doing this with was you. And you were fortunately interested in doing that. So together we created the Inside Out podcast. And back then I kind of wasn't John's invited me to go on to Mormon Stories. I was interested, but I wasn't ready emotionally. I was still going through a very raw time with my faith, and it was very painful experience. And I wasn't confident enough to be, just wasn't ready to be vulnerable, if you like, online. And I'm quite a private person, which is kind of odd because here I am doing a live YouTube, which is not me actually. Anyway, I think throw caution to the wind and just live dangerously. And actually, my wife has been very amazing as well, and you have as well, and give me the confidence to do this. So yeah, I'd love to get John on. I have a lot of respect for him. I like him. I think he's very genuine in what he does. I just wasn't ready to go onto his podcast. We are talking to. I've just sent you a text of someone that is a pretty interesting character to have on the podcast. It's not for the public consumption right now, so to speak, Jim, because
I will check my texts.
Having a conversation with this individual tonight. It's pretty big. Having a phone call tonight, actually. We're also in touch with Richard Bushman, and I can I'm allowed to say that Richard has kindly and graciously agreed to come back onto Inside Out. Richard Bushman is the author of this book here, which is, if you can see that, Joe Smith, Rushton Rolling. There's Richard. He's been on the podcast before, and he has agreed to come back on. Hopefully, we get another one with him, another one or two with Richard in the next few weeks before Christmas, if not in the new year.
Well, Richard is getting very. I think his health is failing to some degree. I understand. Is that correct?
his health is challenged right now, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, he's 95, 96 years old. But still sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find your message. Did you text it to me or did you send it in Messenger?
Messenger. Yeah, this one is a pretty big one, and I think in terms of the topic and the individual is quite extraordinary. We obviously have our listeners will know that we have this ongoing extraordinary relationship with Greg Prince and the conversations there. Greg is just an absolute gem. The book about Joseph Smith. I would love to get Sandra Tanner back on if we can. Sandra, you and I have chatted a few times. I think you're an absolute delight, and I just have so much respect for you. So we've had a great number of guests, and we'd love to continue that. But also we've got some ideas of getting some interesting non-Mormons onto the podcast as well, Jim. These are people who are very, they're in the religious faith field, philosophy. We've had Stephen Hassan, pronounce his last name correctly, who was a cult recovery expert. And that was a fascinating conversation as well. So we've got a lineup of just extraordinary people that are interested in coming on. And if our listeners have got any other ideas of individuals that would like to come on, then absolutely, we're definitely open to that for sure.
All right. Just a few more. So we're coming up on an hour here, and I'm probably going to have to stick to the hour just because of Tab Choir challenges. Medic Design says, I have heard Jim on John DeLynn, but would like to see John appear on this show. Latter-day Saint Digest says, howdy, Latter-day Saint Digest.
Howdy.
Latter-day. And this is probably a comment about Jasmine Rapley. Seriously, being a transphobe and an ex-Mormon at the same time is embarrassing. Yes. Clayton says, this podcast is so awesome. You guys should be quite well pleased with yourselves. And just get Mitt Romney on. Jim is close with him.
Jim, could we get Mitt Romney on? That would be awesome. We can get Mitt.
I hadn't even thought of that. I mean, to say I am close with him is probably not true. Mitt Romney is very close. He was very close to my father, and he is very close to my cousin. I have a cousin in Boston that was a bishop when Mitt Romney was a stake president. And when Mitt Romney accepted the Republican nomination in 2012, my cousin Grant Bennett spoke at the Republican National Convention to talk about Mitt Romney's church service, because the perception was he's this out-of-touch rich guy who doesn't ever spend any time with anybody who isn't ridiculously wealthy. And Mitt Romney is a bishop and a stake president, was down in the trenches like every bishop and stake president, dealing with all kinds of problems from all kinds of economic walks of life. And my cousin talked about that. So I've met Mitt Romney on several occasions, and at one point reached out to him and tried to get him to run with the United Utah Party when he ran for the Senate. And he set us up with one of his campaign guys to talk about that. And that might have happened if Orrin Hatch hadn't resigned or hadn't decided not to run again. But the best conversation I had with Mitt Romney, and most recent, was when Mitt Romney was traveling with the choir. We went to Peru. And Mitt and Ann Romney, and it was the first time I'd ever met Ann, were there. And I went up to him and introduced myself again and talked to him for a minute. And I said, I just want to tell you, and we've just lost Ian again. But what I said was, I just want to tell you that I consider your first impeachment vote to convict Donald Trump to be the greatest act of political courage that I have seen in my lifetime or ever expect to see in my lifetime. Because that vote cost him his Senate seat. I mean, he didn't run again because there was so much outrage and anger that he had done that. But he said, I had to do it because it was the right thing to do. And I took an oath that I would be impartial and that I would do this, and he voted to convict Donald Trump in that first impeachment. Was the only Republican to do so. Was the first Republican in history to impeach somebody in his own party. And I also told him it was like my father was back. So I have a picture of myself. I will find that picture. But I have a picture of myself when I met him, who took and said that to him. As long as Ian isn't here, I'm going to continue to read comments. Good evening, guys. Just jumping on. Better late than never. Thank you, Connor. Mighty Jor, would you all consider on having some hardliners, Jacob Hansen, Ward Radio, etc., and ask them hard questions? Oh, here's Ian.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd like to have some very robust, strong, respectful, but absolute hardline questions. I'm up for that. I'm not afraid of being able to talk about stuff. There's some things that we know really well, some things that we don't know, of course. And you learn from those kind of conversations. So I'm okay with that, Jim. I think that question's probably
well. Jacob is not capable of having a conversation. Jacob debates. Every conversation with Jacob has a winner and a loser. He doesn't listen. He's looking for an opening so he can score some points. And I find that exhausting and obnoxious. I don't know that he would even agree to come on our podcast. But I had a recent scrape with him on Twitter because he went online and said, why is BYU hiring professors that don't support the family proclamation? And he found a guy, and we talked about this a little bit, I think, in our conversation with Greg Prince that's going to come out this Saturday. It's a guy Greg Prince knows, and he's a big donor to BYU, and he is a progressive. And he is a senior fellow, which is an advisory role for an ancillary organization for BYU. It's essentially an honorary title that they give to people who donate a lot of money. And Jacob Hansen was all over Twitter this weekend, along with Luke Hansen, who runs the Cougar Chronicle, saying, your tithing dollars are paying professors that are undermining the church. And it just drove me nuts because he's not a professor. He's not being paid. And it's a lie. And then Jacob Hansen ended up saying, the church still chose him. And I'm like, well, Jacob, your initial comment says he's being paid by the church and that he's a professor, and neither one of those things is true. And now that you know those things aren't true, you can't just say you've made a mistake. You are now actively lying. And Jacob Hansen just kind of moved on. And I mean, so I do not see Jacob Hansen as a good faith actor in this sphere. Ward Radio, I have a much different feeling about because I consider Cardinellis to be a friend and actually a good friend. And Cardinellis was a huge behind the scenes and in front of the scenes support in the latest Aaron Sherinian kerfuffle. He was on the right side of that. I mean, Cardin is very Trumpy and Cardin is very right wing, but he's also capable of listening. Jacob is not. So from my perspective, although it would be kind of fun, Ian, to have Jacob on and let you go at him.
I was listening to what you're saying. I'd be interested, Jake, if you can hear this, I would love to have you on. I could facilitate, right? I can push back pretty hard.
Stephen Pineacker's tried that twice.
Okay. Yeah, but with respect to Stephen Pineacker, I get that. Stephen, I'm not saying I'll be successful, but I could try. But I'd be open to facilitating. I think having a meeting to have some baseline rules and kind of an understanding of how to, how to have a good constructive conversation and not kind of entrap each other or try to set each other up or score points. We're not interested in that. But being able to have that baseline agreement and then go on to the podcast, I could facilitate between you two. Yeah, I think I have some pretty intense, robust conversations, but we could do it in a respectful way. I'm open to that. Ward Radio, absolutely. I think it'd be great to have a conversation with those guys. And I don't mind the tough conversations and the hard questions. I think, we just do the best we can to have that conversation. As long as we're respectful and we're constructive, I don't mind agreeing to disagree on stuff, and that's okay. But yeah, I'd be open to having some very interesting and colourful people on the podcast, as long as it doesn't get into a screaming match or fighting, because that's not good for anybody, right? But, that'll be my thoughts. Yeah. So anyway, I think we're over your time. We're like 4 minutes.
That's
over.
right.
I'm back.
If you could show me a single conversation where Jacob Hansen does that, where Jacob Hansen has a constructive conversation with anybody,
okay,
then I'd be willing to have him on. I have yet to see it happen.
What if I do this? I reach out to Jacob. I have a phone call with him or a video call. We have the conversation, right? We agree on some stuff, and I invite him to come on. And I'll come back to you. We can chat, and if you come on, we can agree some basic things, basic rules, or everybody respectfully. Then I think we should be open to that. But why don't I reach out to him and have a chat?
All right. You've also reached out to Ward Radio, didn't you, at one point?
I have. I've not had a response from Ward Radio. And you said earlier you've not seen Jacob have those kind of conversations. You forget that this is the only true and living podcast on the earth.
That's true.
Surely that amounts to something. That's got to mean something.
That's got to stand for something.
Yeah, I mean, we're the podcast with all the answers. We've got all the facts, all the truth. I'm having fun. But Romney drives me up the wall sometimes, but I will always respect him for that and for being a representative of a party I could respect. Okay. SLC Vinyl. Okay.
Also, Adam Miller could be a great guest. He's my favorite LDS Voice author. I don't know Adam Miller. He was in the Inconvenient Faith documentary, and so I feel like I know him because I've spent hours editing his contributions to that. He lives, I think he's in Texas. I mean, we certainly could have him on remotely. We have everybody on remotely. But we have each other on remotely because we don't have a central studio. Yeah, Adam, do you know Adam Miller, Ian, or do you know of him?
I've heard the name, but I don't know him.
He is a very thoughtful and sort of philosophical. He's thinker and writer, and yeah, I think he'd be a great one to have on.
Yeah.
Latter-day Daily Digest says Chief Master Debater. That's Jacob Hansen, whereas Greg is a prince, which I agree with. And you want to read this here?
Yeah, Don Bradley is a fascinating historian who left the faith and came back to a study of church history. Excellent guest to bring on. These are great suggestions, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Carden knows him pretty well. I think we could get in touch with him.
And again, I think our podcast is safe. It's different. We're in the middle of the road, right? You've got me on the outside defending the church at times. You on the inside, giving legitimate criticism at times. We kind of that yin yang kind of balance. This is the podcast to have these conversations on. We don't ask a load of questions. It's natural. Yeah, we have some direction and some guidelines that we follow, but Inside Out is a very safe place, I think, for everyone to come on and
Mighty Jor doesn't think you're up to it, Ian.
Okay, well, Mighty Jor, I'm the kind of guy that's like a challenge to me. I know you've done that deliberately, and all of my my Marvel, Thor, Thanos senses are now like thinking, yeah, we'll see then, Mighty Joe. We'll see. You'll see, Mighty Joe. This is the truest podcast on the earth. You'll see. You need to get a testimony. Mighty Joe, you need to get a testimony of this podcast because we're going to deliver.
Okay, we're getting more suggestions. I didn't care much for Ward Radio and Jacob Hansen's criticism of former Bishop Bo Euler. That's fairly recent, right? Apparently this guy, I don't know Bo Euler, but he apparently said some things about the church's policy on abuse, and they're now going after him. This is the current feeding frenzy. This is a name, Ian, you've suggested.
Yes. Now, I've reached out to Elisa, and I've not had a response. So, Elisa, if you're hearing this, if you're listening to this, I sent you a message. You might not have seen it. We would just be honored to have you on. You're just a wonderful individual, and we love your YouTube videos. She's great. Dan McClellan. Yeah, we've reached out to Dan. Dan has responded. It's very seemingly positive response. His schedule's crazy up until January. I think you're aware of that, Jim. But we'll be talking to Dan in the new year. I've listened to his stuff. Just a very smart guy, and we'd love to have him on. Lindsay Hansen, Part 9. You know Lindsay, I think, Jim. Do you?
I do. Again, I'm acquainted with Lindsay. At one point, she was dating a very good friend of mine, but that has ended since. But she's also in the Inconvenient Faith series, and she would be a fascinating one to have on. Her Year of Polygamy podcast is really essential listening to understand polygamy.
Right.
Clayton settled. Jacob Hansen wants to debate Mark Driscoll. Talk about going into the Lions Den. Do you know who Mark Driscoll is, Ian?
I've heard the name. Tell me about Mark Driscoll.
Just a big evangelical pastor who's just taken shots in the Mormons. And SLC Vinyl says probably the only time I'd be in Hansen's corner. I want to take a moment before we sign off to praise Jacob Hansen for just a minute, because I'm accused of, somebody was like, Jim is obsessed with Jacob Hansen and is obsessed with everything he does. And that is 100% not true. The only time I want to engage with Jacob Hansen is when he's attacking the church, which is more frequent than he's willing to admit. But specifically when he's attacking my friend. When he was going after my friend Aaron Sherinian, I felt it necessary to stand up to him. And the thing that drove me crazy about it was, it's not just that you are attacking Aaron Sherinian, and this weekend he was attacking this guy I don't know, but it was the same sort of principle. Jacob thinks that it's okay to attack the church if the church is not righteous enough for his tastes. And it drives me crazy that he thinks that he should get credit for defending the church when he is attacking the church. And what he did all weekend here was attack the church and attack BYU for something it didn't do, for a lie that he had made up, that this guy was a professor being paid with tithing dollars when he's a volunteer who pretty much doesn't do anything, and he has no contact with students. So anyway, but I'm going to say this nice about Jacob Hansen. Jacob Hansen went on Alex O'Connor. Do you know who Alex O'Connor is?
I do not.
He does these sort of round robin debates where everybody's sitting around him, and they'll come up and they'll debate. And he was debating the problem of evil, the idea that he said that the idea that there is a loving God does not fit the data. And Jacob Hansen was in the round robin, and he was masterful. When he's confronting critics of the church from the outside, there are really very few people who can articulate the church's position as well as Jacob Hansen does. I would really love to see him go toe-to-toe with Mark Driscoll, because I think Jacob Hansen would be masterful. Because Jacob Hansen spends all day, every day, debating, figuring out how to attack it. Debating is a very specific skill, and Jacob Hansen is very good at it. And when he's using his powers for good, cheer him on. It's when he uses his powers for evil that I'm not so happy about it.
So here's the deal, Jacob, if you can hear this, I'm going to call you, pick up the phone, take my call. You and I will have a chat, hopefully, and then we'll have a conversation. We'll discuss this opportunity, and we'll lay some ground rules where we could set up a conversation.
He won't follow them.
Well, we'll see. Give me a chance. No. Again, it's the true podcast on the earth. I'm kind of, I'm kind of middle ground here, right? I'm not a threat to him. I'm not in the church, etc. I defend the church, for goodness sake. I've spent the last 2 weeks defending the church against Christians, right, who have been trying to pull the church down. Hansen was on a podcast. Okay, right. Yeah, let's reach out to him. Okay.
This is the last comment that I have time to comment on. Maybe shooting for the stars, but Brandon Flowers was in the Inconvenient Faith. Would love to hear you guys talk to him about his journey as an LDS rock star.
I've reached out to him a long time ago, 6 months ago. I didn't get a reply.
So I have so an Inconvenient Faith was directed and produced and funded entirely by a guy named Robert Reynolds. Robert is the manager of the Killers. He's also the brother of Dan Reynolds, who is the lead singer of Imagine Dragons. And Robert and I are in regular contact. I spoke to him 2 days ago because we're still trying to get Inconvenient Faith out there. He wants to get a broader audience. I'm trying to convince him to make more episodes, because I think that's part of the problem, is that the YouTube channel just hasn't had anything new since he launched this. But through Robert, I have met Brandon on several occasions. I have his phone number. At one point when I ran for mayor, Brandon agreed to do a campaign event for me, but it never really materialized. It wasn't because Brandon backed out. But I have talked to Robert about having Brandon on. And the thing about Brandon, wonderful, wonderful human being, and almost painfully shy. He is not, he's this dynamic, wonderful rock star performer. But personally, he's not this sort of glory hog. He's exactly kind of the opposite of what you would expect a rock star to be. He is a very unassuming, humble, and shy sort of guy. This is not something he enjoys doing. And at one point, I was trying to pitch a podcast to the church. I was talking to Aaron Sherinian, and I was talking to some of the other people that he introduced me to in the church bureaucracy. Jacob Hansen always mocks me because I don't mention the names of these people that I've talked to, but I've talked to a good number of people as part of this process. And one of the ideas was that Brandon and I would co-host a podcast because he would be sort of a big name. And unfortunately, Ian, your name isn't as big as Brandon Flowers, and neither is mine. And I talked to Robert, and somebody asked me, would Brandon do it? And I said he wouldn't do it if I asked him, but he might do it if the church asked him. And I said to Robert, and Robert said he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it even if the church asked him. It's just not his personality. It's just not what he's good at. He is so exceptionally good at what he's good at that, to expect him to it's just not something that he does. Anyway. All
right.
Let's see. Jim and Jacob together never ends pretty. That is true. I'm kind of proud of that to some degree. Nice work reaching out, Ian.
Thank
Ever
you.
see the video of Brandon getting ambushed by Richard Dawkins on some news night show? I have not seen that, and I bet it's not fun.
I've seen that.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
How did you do?
It's not well. It's quite awkward, quite uncomfortable.
And it's just not his thing. It's just not what he does. He's very much a believer. He is very much an active, believing member of the church. But, Ian, you and I, we love doing this. We love the scrap. We love the conversation. It's just not his thing. I don't think it's 100% out of the realm of possibility that could come on, because certainly I have more of a connection there, but it would be entirely dependent on whether or not he would want to do it.
Jim, what about I know we're going to go here, but what about the audio, right? So it's one thing coming onto a YouTube channel and doing this where the whole world can see it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's quite different, I think. Someone coming onto the regular Inside Out audio where it's just your voice, right? And so maybe that might be a good fit. Maybe, I don't know.
I just don't. SLC Vinyl has just privately sent me the video of Brandon Flowers. Oh boy.
Yeah, it is interesting. Jim,
right.
I think you have to go do some recordings with the.
I do have to go, but
yes.
Ian, it has been delightful. I very much appreciate all of you commenting. You make this a lot of fun, and this has been. I just have a great time. I just feel like I'm at home with old friends.
It's fun. It's fun. I like it.
It's a lot of fun. So thank you very much, Ian. Thank you all, everybody. And we will see you. This Saturday is another episode with Greg Prince and Ganesh Cherian. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That's correct. Cherian. That's right.
Yeah. And so look for that. And in the meantime, I think we're sort of settling into this Tuesday schedule. And
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens, but we look forward to seeing you next time on our next live stream and our next episode of Inside Out. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.